Welcome to the first live edition of Who's Better Baseball, the host where we answer very simple questions throughout the show about who's better in baseball. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein, joined by my co-host, Patrick Lyons, and baseball is back. You enjoy watching some games throughout the first weekend here?
Dude, it was great. It was like I had lost an appendage and I had automatically just had it back. It was great. Felt like life was normal. We got 6 more months of this craziness, and I couldn't be happier.
I couldn't be sadder.
Oh, yeah.
As a Mets fan, you do this thing every offseason. You talk yourself into it. You think, all right, this is the year. And then I watched the Mets get swept this weekend, where the biggest stories come out of Citi Field were stuff about Reese Hoskins, and let's talk about other teams. Let's move past my Mets for a while. I have to do enough of that on Locked On Mets this week. I don't need to spend any more time on the New York Mets right now.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams that are struggling out there that we'll get to, and players that did some dominating in a way in which certain fan bases probably are already sick and tired of that player after just 3 or 4 games. It was kind of one of those weekends where it was almost all or nothing for so many teams out there.
And that's what happens with small sample sizes, right? All the numbers are inflated. And with that, let's talk about the best player in baseball this season so far. And the guy that I'm going to make the argument for being just the best player in baseball in general, that's Mookie Betts. So he has started the year through his first 5 games, going 11 for 18. That's a 611 batting average with 4 home runs, 10 RBIs, 9 runs scored. We talk about WRC plus a lot at Just Baseball, which is weighted runs created plus, measures hitters on a league average of 100. It's 5 games, but Mookie Betts WRC plus is 379, which means he's 279% better than your league average hitter. Oh, and also he put up a win already in 5 games when it comes to F4. Not to mention, he's looked good at shortstop. How good is this dude?
There's nothing he can't do. I bet if I could put money on it, he'd probably bowl like a 300 or something crazy like that. I don't know if he's ever done such a thing. No, of course. I mean, yeah, he's talented in everything he does. He's an absolute athlete. That's, what allowed him to go from right field back to the dirt on the infield when he was as a minor leaguer, but then to move over to play shortstop and help the Dodgers out in that way. And again, sure, maybe it's only league average defense, but to have that kind of ability at his age, that's the other thing too, is he's not one of those young players in the game that can adjust and evolve at a new position. But for him to be doing that at this age, I think it helps too that you got Shohei Ohtani hitting behind you in the lineup. Hey, look, I think if you or I were batting in front of Shohei Ohtani, we'd at least have an OPS plus of like 101, 102. So let's give ourselves a little credit as well.
Trust me, if you watch me hit back in high school, I would not have an OPS plus of 101, no matter who's hitting behind me, in front of me. No, I would get set down in strikes every single time. But Mookie Betts to do what not only he's done, this year, it's short sample size, whatever, but to look at his career, I was looking at the F4 leaderboards, and I kind of went year by year throughout his career. So you look at since 2015, and whenever I did this in the past, Mike Trout would always be the league leader in wins above replacement. And now that changed. If you look at from 2015 through last season, Mookie Betts now leads all of baseball in F4. And 2015 was the second year of his career. So now he's at 56.5 as his F4 since then. Mike Trout 56.1. And it took last season where Betts had an 8-win season and Trout got hurt, had a 3-win season for him to take that over. But it's just the consistency that Mookie Betts has where he's pretty much always, in almost every season he's played, a top 5 player in baseball. And he might not always be the best player. Last year, Acuna was slightly better when it came to F4, and obviously the 40-70, made him stand out as the best player in the game. But I think about it, if I was a GM, is there a better, more consistent player you can say, all right, I know he's going to be on the field. I know he's going to hit me home runs. I know he's going to play me great defense. Now, wherever I put him, apparently, even shortstop, it just seems like in some ways we don't appreciate Mookie Betts enough for being right at the top of the league for now a decade.
It's true. And he posts, right? Other than his second year in LA in 2021, where he was limited to 122 games. He's out there. He's durable, right? Like his game isn't based on any one facet. Like you said, he's very flexible. Like he can do a lot of those things really well. So just going out there and playing, even if he's not 100%, which we know most ball players aren't over the course of that 162 game marathon. So he just has that skill set that's amazing. And, you can count on him for, close to 20 stolen bases. He hasn't stolen 20, since 2018, but 16, 10, 10, 12, 14, hasn't gotten one yet this year. He's going to get some of those numbers, with the pitchers that Ohtani and Freeman are going to end up seeing over the course of a season. So he just does everything really well. And as you said, adding in that extra tool in his toolbox to be able to play middle infield the way he's done, despite the fact that, he is a 6-time Silver Slugger award winner in right field and a 6-time Gold Glove award winner in right field. It's absolutely impressive. It's an invaluable skill that he has, that flexibility at those elite positions.
And I know you were telling me before we hit record that he was your MVP pick this year. And I think the narrative is already kind of forming for him. Granted, he's got 2 guys on his team that could take some MVP votes, and Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani. But with Ohtani not pitching this year, you just look at a team in the Dodgers that might win who knows how many games. Maybe they win 110 this year and really, kind of push the envelope. But what Betts is going to open up for that team to be the starting shortstop, to now allow them to, they have maybe some questions at how they're going to end up filling second base, but that's a lot easier to fill than shortstop. And so he just has opened up a world of possibilities for them throughout this season while still producing at this ridiculous level offensively. He's not going to hit over 600 all year, but why exactly did you pick Mookie Betts to win the MVP this season?
Well, he's a perennial candidate, right? So immediately right off the bat, you're going to say, well, he's going to be in my top 5 guys. But I think it really has a lot to do with, him playing shortstop early on in the season and filling that hole, which I think is so incredibly valuable. And it's a story, right? Some of being an MVP has to do with the story that you tell over the course of the season rather than just your statistics. You think about it last year with a guy like Bryce Harper, where, had he been eligible to play or, healthy to play really early on in the season, going from the outfield to first base for the first time in his career like that. We just don't see outfielders transition successfully to first base. Like, that's impressive. Like, that's a story right there. That is a commitment, to win and putting your team over everything else. And so I think Betts doing that has kind of leveled the playing field a little bit. And sure, it's hard when you've got other superstars around you like Ohtani and Freeman, but we know Ohtani is just going to be a DH. So it's going to take something remarkable out of him, 50 home runs really to grab some of those MVP votes. Freeman is always really super consistent, but this new kind of dynamic with Betts playing shortstop, I think just is really speaks to the story of being a valuable player. Cause that's something that, Fangraphs wins above replacement, Baseball Reference isn't going to be able to calculate. So it's something that you can't see that I think a lot of voters like myself in the BBWAA, we like those kind of things, and going back to what you started off by saying, talking about Mike Trout, to your credit, if you look at Baseball Reference, if you look at B-WAR, going back to 2015, that first year that Betts came on the scene. So we're discounting a little bit of Trout's first few years, but since 2015, no player in baseball has more seasons of 5 wins above replacement than Mookie Betts. He's got 7. And you got, Mike Trout with 6, and then a pair of Cardinals guys who have not looked so great on the other end against the Dodgers in Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. So yeah, Mookie Betts back in that conversation as best player of his generation. He still has some room to make up, and I think it's still Mike Trout as that guy. But if you're talking about the best player in the game right now, it starts and stops with Mookie Betts.
I think it might end up becoming one of those things where we're going to look at, for basketball, you look at MJ versus LeBron, and obviously that's a debate that's, probably the most popular debate in sports history in itself. But now it's getting to the point with LeBron James where it's like, all right, the length of career, where it's like best career, MJ might be best player. And it might be the same type of thing with Mike Trout. Like that prime of Mike Trout, you kind of can't touch it. His height was better than Mookie Betts, but Mookie Betts could stay at this level for 5 more seasons and continue to be right up there as one of the best players in baseball. And when we look at the end of his career, I mean, Betts has a chance to be a really special inner circle Hall of Famer. I want to kind of close this conversation looking at the next 5 years here. Obviously, Acuna is right there with him and just won the MVP and will be a contender again this year. What other players do you see this next 5-year window that can kind of potentially knock Betts off that mantle that he might have grabbed from Mike Trout now?
Yeah, I think it's hard for some of those young guys to do it because you need a little bit of a resume. With Acuna Jr., he certainly has to be one of the favorites. I am concerned about the injuries, right, and the impact of all those stolen bases. From the players that I've talked to, one of the reasons why I think stolen bases were down simply had to do with the wear and tear it takes to steal a base, slide into the bag, the tag that's made, etc. So we'll keep an eye on that with Acuna Jr. Julio Rodriguez, he's only in his third year. Bobby Witt Jr. only in his third year. Same with Adley Rutschman. So those are all like kind of the new kids on the scene that are going to be trying to make a name for themselves. But I think they still have another year or two. I think it's probably even more like 2 years before they can really kind of put their stamp on things in the generation that kind of overlaps the generation of the Trout, Arenado, Goldschmidt, and Betts. So those are two of the top young, or 3 or 4 of the top young names that are going to be trying to really battle for that crown.
I agree for sure. And I think, Juan Soto is another one clearly, but he doesn't have the defensive impact. Now he's looked pretty good in this first series, but still Mookie Betts to me kind of stands out above the rest. And, even if one of those guys, if J-Rod this season ends up winning the AL MVP, you're still going to want to see him do that again. And I think that's the thing that Betts has that no one else does. It's just this long line of consistency that never seems to stop. He's just always a effective, productive player.
Yeah, Aaron Judge, of course. I think he's in the conversation as an also ran, right, and he can probably do a lot to help himself out in the latter parts of his career. But nevertheless, I mean, going. Do you like the Jaws? Do you like Jaws as a statistic to look at a player's Hall of Fame credentials? Is that
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I think that's a good statistic to look at. Look at the peak. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for Betts, he's the 9th greatest right fielder of all time. And you think about some of the greatest power hitters of all time playing right field. I think Trout's the 3rd greatest center fielder at that point. So again, a lot of that has to do with the position and the other guys. But again, that gives you an idea if you say, has Mookie Betts actually been that good? Yeah, he has. I know he's been on the coast in Boston, and so the Boston fans are gonna pump him up when he's one of their guys. And now he's on the West Coast with the Dodgers. Dodgers fans are gonna be nice and loud and pump them up. But if you quiet that noise and really just dig into the numbers, we are talking about one of the greatest players of all time, and certainly the greatest of his generation,
who has a lot of time left in this game, which is awesome to see here. Let's make a transition here to talk about some new aces in new places. We've seen a lot of guys move this offseason, whether it be trade, signings. Let's go through what has happened so far, and then we'll talk about the impact. So Corbin Burnes made his first start with the Orioles. I believe he didn't have the best spring. Well, goes into a regular season game, 11 punch outs, 6 innings pitched, 1 earned run, no walks. Looked like Corbin Burnes to me. Dylan Cease went 4 2/3, 2 earned runs, couple walks, 6 strikeouts. Tyler Glasnow has made 2 starts now, giving up 3 runs, 5 walks, 8 strikeouts. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, not the best first start. We all know that he struggled in Korea, but he came back stateside, pitched in front of Dodgers fans for the first time. 5 scoreless, 2 hits, no walks, 5 strikeouts. And then kind of a de facto ace, Marcus Stroman. Nice first start for him. He went 6 scoreless in his debut with the Yankees. Of all those guys, who stands out to you as far as the ace that's going to have the biggest impact this year?
Well, I mean, Corbin Burnes seems like he has to be that guy. But hearing you read that list of names and hearing the questions surrounding this, I think Marcus Stroman really jumps out at me because the first 4 guys on that list, from Burnes, Cease, Yamamoto, and Glasnow, they all got to pitch in front of the home crowd. Whereas Marcus Stroman is going in there at Minute Maid Park against those very loud and boisterous Houston Astros fans and getting his first taste of Yankees baseball, that tradition, being a part of that evil empire as it, still maintains to be, over the last 20 plus years. And for him to go out and to throw a shutout in that kind of environment when their true ace, their number one, Garrett Cole, is on the shelf for a while, that signing becomes even that much more pivotal. And Marcus Stroman is the kind of guy that wants to be that ace and wants to be the one that says, hey, when we go out there, whether it's the wild card round or the division series, or even when it comes time for the World Series, if we're still in it, I want that ball in game one. Because I want to go out there and be the best pitcher on my team and the best pitcher in the game. So I think Stroman is kind of an outlier for that reason, doing it on the road and doing it for a rotation that really needs him to be that. So I think that was probably the most impressive of all the guys, of all the new aces and new places.
You know, Marcus Stroman, I got to watch him firsthand for a couple years when he pitched for the Mets, and it's hard to find another guy that's more fun to watch. I mean, for one, he's like a shortstop on the pitcher's mound, the way he plays defense, which I always love to see. But he brings just a certain level of energy every time he steps on the mound. And he's not, we look at the list of guys we just talked about, by far, he is the least talented. I hate to say it about Marcus Stroman, but that's just the reality. He doesn't have the stuff that these other guys have, but he competes at a really high level. And you're right, when it comes to not only just the shoes he's trying to fill, but also in the season that he's trying to fill them, the Yankees need to win right now. And Marcus Stroman was sort of this fallback, right? That they wanted Yoshinobu Yamamoto, didn't land him. Blake Snell was too expensive. Jordan Montgomery was too expensive. So they signed Marcus Stroman, and the market kind of spoke against Stroman. People didn't really want to sign him. I mean, you look at what he's done in his career. Why is Eduardo Rodriguez getting a much better contract than Marcus Stroman? It doesn't necessarily make sense. And here he is shoving against the Astros of all teams in his first start. Yeah, he really did stand out this weekend.
Yeah, very, very impressive. I think if we're just looking at the traditional ways of looking at statistics of this group, who's maybe most likely to win a Cy Young Award, I think he was one of the favorites too in the American League. Corbin Burns going out there on opening day, a whole new world for Baltimore. Of course, they won the East last year, but that was their coming out party. This was now, okay, we are the new Baltimore Orioles with our new ownership, going out and buying beers for everybody out at bars all around Baltimore and what have you, going out there with that crowd on opening day against an Angels lineup that did have Mike Trout. Okay, he got himself the first opening day home run of the season, at least in the U.S. But Burns to go out there with 11 strikeouts. I mean, he immediately said, look, get on my back, guys. I'm the number one starter. 2 through 4, you guys figure it out. You know, that rotation is in really safe hands with Corbin Burns right now.
And I really hope that this is more than a one-year thing. With new ownership, you would think that they might be able to actually lock Burns up. And if they have a great season, he might want to stay. But regardless, this is going to be a year where Corbin Burns can make himself a lot of money on top of it all. And you know, talk about just the perfect situation to do that. I mean, he goes to a ready-made winner. He's got a ridiculous lineup behind him. He's got some good defenders behind him, too, a young team that can really help him on that front. Corbin Burns right now, I mean, I don't know. You said he is the favorite, but I don't know who else could possibly challenge him this year in the AL. I mean, Kevin Gausman's always up there. There's a lot of names, but yeah, Corbin Burns to be the Cy Young in his 1 year, at least for the Orioles, I think that's a realistic possibility, and he showed it in that first start for sure.
Yeah, he would be one of those few guys, just like Blake Snell, to win a Cy Young Award in both leagues, having won it with the Brewers, I want to say, in 2021. So yeah, he was really great and jumped out on that opening day start. It was weird for Glass now to basically get a second opening day start, right? He looked even better than in Korea with 6 strong innings there, only giving up 1 run against a Cardinals lineup that had the veteran presence, but just hasn't really been able to figure it out, quite that much. So he's been really solid. And, there are 2 guys that are aces in new places that we haven't seen yet. We're kind of waiting to find out in Blake Snell and in Jordan Montgomery. And I think coincidentally, both of them are going to make their first starts with the team in San Francisco. I know the expectation for Jordan Montgomery is April 19th in San Francisco with the Diamondbacks. So there's a few more that are knocking on the door here for us, Ryan, saying, wait a minute, don't make your decision just yet about these aces in new places.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see everyone get into the fold, and those guys obviously getting the late start. And that NL West has just pitching all over the place. Snell going from Padres to the Giants, Dylan Cease coming in. So it really did kind of infuse some juice into that division as far as what it's going to look like throughout the season. Last thing on the new aces before we move on. I'm curious, who do you think is going to turn into the ace of this Dodgers team? Everyone expected Yoshinobu Yamamoto, being the highest paid pitcher in baseball now, to just hit the ground running and be the new ace of the Dodgers. And Tyler Glasnow is this guy that we've never really seen it fully realized, right? We've seen it in spurts. He's huge. He has nasty stuff. You watch him pitch in a single start, you're like, yeah, that guy, no one can throw the ball better than him. Is this the year? Does he go to the Dodgers and all of a sudden he's actually healthy and post up for 30 plus starts and give them 200 innings and 220 strikeouts? Is Glasnow going to actually be the ace of the Dodgers, even though all the hype was really attached to Yamamoto?
I wouldn't want to bet against Glasnow for that, right? You set the stage here perfectly. I wouldn't want to bet against him, but knowing his history of what it is, it also wouldn't surprise you if he were to get injured. Yamamoto, highest paid pitcher in the history of the game already, before he'd even thrown that first pitch. We're still waiting to see where his ceiling is at. If he's, kind of mid threes in the ERA or even low threes, you're like, hey, that's really solid, but that's not the best pitcher in the game right now. I think maybe a sleeper pick that wouldn't surprise you. Might be more of a long shot than Yamamoto and Glasnow, but kind of a sleeper pick that, again, wouldn't surprise you if he became this ace of the team right away. Is Bobby Miller. He shoved for 6 shutout innings right away. And in an organization where the Dodgers seem to just bring these guys in and into the Dodger way, more with the starting rotation than anywhere else. And if Bobby Miller went out and started doing some of those things that we saw from Walker Buehler early on in his career, I don't think that would be so shocking.
And the funny thing is, Walker Buehler on the way back too, and looked great apparently in his first rehab start, as he tries to make a return at some point. Doesn't seem like he'll be out too long, as they're just kind of bring him along a little bit slower. They want him to be ready probably to pitch in the playoffs. And look, that's a nasty rotation, especially when you remember that Clayton Kershaw still around. And every time that he ends up on a baseball field, he pitches to a sub 2.5 ERA. So that's where this Dodgers team can really go to a different place than everybody else. There's so much talent in-house. Just a matter of who's going to be healthy when it matters. But man, that rotation can be really, really scary. Let's talk about another team that's in a big market who had maybe the best weekend of any team, the New York Yankees. I mean, there's a lot of teams that had some sweeps here, but to go into Houston and sweep the Astros, and for Juan Soto to let everyone know that he has arrived that quickly, pretty awesome stuff for this Yankees team.
The sweepiest of all sweeps this weekend. Definitely Yankees going into Houston to take 4, their best ever opening day start. You can't get any better than that. 4-0 on the road. I know Yankees fans are just salivating right now. They still got a few more days before they get their home opener later on this week. Yeah, he just was able to do it all, had the game winning and the go ahead RBI on Sunday, the home run over the weekend, and then a defensive play, saving the game on opening day. You couldn't have drawn it up any better. A perfect strike home to Trevino to nab the runner in the 9th inning. Like that's pretty perfect. And, I think we're going to see that a couple more times this year. Again, that's not necessarily because Juan Soto is all of a sudden going to be a much better player, but with a short right field porch, he is going to be playing a lot closer to, the infield dirt, and teams are going to continue to be aggressive. So there are going to be more opportunities for him. That's the bottom line. With Big G, Giancarlo Stanton, clogging up the DH spot, he's going to have to be out there in right field. So bottom line is he's going to get more of those opportunities. Expect more of those outfield assists from Juan Soto, who's done it defensively, and he's done it even beyond what we could have imagined at the plate so far.
You'd be surprised what a contract year will do. I'm sure he focused on his defense more this offseason than ever before, because that's the only hole you can poke in his game. When he's in the box, no one's better at getting on base, and he's got the power. I would also not be surprised if, along with setting a career high in outfield assists, playing with that short porch that he has yet to get to enjoy yet. We'll see that coming up here soon. I think we're going to see 40 home runs from Juan Soto. I'm pretty sure he's never even done that one before. So you add in that element to it. if Aaron Judge can stay healthy, I mean, we just kind of saw a taste of what this team can be. They're not going to go 162-0, but to get a sweep against that team in that ballpark, a team that has owned them, really. I mean, the Astros in the playoffs against the Yankees, that's been this kind of one-sided rivalry. And now Yankees fans can go into work on Monday, puff out their chest and say, this is the year that the Yankees are back to being the Yankees because we got Juan Soto.
And we talked earlier about the benefits of batting in front of Shohei Ohtani, and no shade to the Angels players who have hit in front of Ohtani in the past, but they're not as good as Mookie Betts, and no shade to any hitter that's batted in front of Aaron Judge before, but they are also not Juan Soto. So I think that's a huge benefit that has led to him starting off the year batting .529 with a 1365 OPS. Like that's such a huge piece to this. And you're right. You talk about Juan Soto being in a contract year. You wonder if he's looking at the fates of JD Martinez and Snell and Jordan Montgomery and going, I guess I got to bat 400 this year, hit 50 home runs in order to get paid what I should have gotten paid, already with what I've done. So I need to be even that much better and undeniable in order for me to really get $500 million in free agency. Oh, well, here I go.
Maybe, and bring it back to our initial conversation. Maybe he is the best player in baseball this year. Maybe he can, for 1 year, put it all together in a way where you're right. He gets the $500 million plus in this contract. It's going to be one of the best stories to follow, really, in that division, to watch both Burns and Soto as these 1 year players here going to new teams in a division race and playing head to head a lot too. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to maybe even see that in a playoff game, right? Corbin Burns squaring off against Juan Soto, for all in a wild card game or divisional round. That could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's must-see TV. Immediately break in. None against Harold Reynolds, but zip the lip. Let's go ahead. We're live from Yankee Stadium. Soto, Burns. Let's watch that. Yeah, sign me up, man. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Who does Scott Boras root for in that matchup? Both of them are his clients. Which way does he go?
I don't know, but he can spin it any which way he wants. Like, Matt, remember that at bat? Like, yeah, this guy struck out on 3 pitches. Yeah, but it was still entertaining, right? Or, oh, he gave up the game, the go-ahead grand slam. Yeah, but that was still it was 11 pitch at bat. Did you see the way Burns moved it? He could spin it any which way he wants. Only issue is now, teams are kind of wise to that, and they're not really buying what he's selling quite like in the past.
Yeah, I did an article on this recently for Just Baseball where I looked at this flop of an offseason for Scott Boras, and what I'd said was basically, yes, it seems like teams are wising up to his tactics, but the 2025 free agent class could cure all for Scott Boras because it's Burns, Soto, Bregman, Alonso. I mean, he's just absolutely loaded with clients that are going to hit free agency. So we'll see what happens when we get to that point next year. Speaking of guys on the last year of their deal, though, Shane Bieber, he's the one guy that we thought could have got traded at the deadline. Then he got hurt. We thought he could get traded this offseason, and nothing happened. The Guardians decided to hold. First start, it was against the Oakland A's, but 6 scoreless, 11 strikeouts, only 1 walk, 4 hits allowed. And the thing that jumped out to everybody, the velocity. It's a guy that last year we saw him sitting at 89 a lot, and he was still effective, but not necessarily where he wants to be living. He spent the whole offseason with Driveline to try to get that velo back. Now he's back sitting 91 to 93. If that velocity holds, is Shane Bieber going to be the piece we're all talking about at the trade deadline?
Yeah, he has to be the hottest commodity. Obviously, this is a guy that's got the Cy Young Award right in his display case, and has 5 opening day starts under his belt too, which is crazy for a guy that's only 28 years old. He has to be that top guy, and he's pitched in big spots. Obviously, we know that the AL Central is the weakest, along with the NL Central in all of MLB, but still he's pitching those high profile games, and so he has that kind of experience. And for him to be on his best in his best game, like we've seen so far after that 1 start against Oakland, I think he very much becomes a pretty big trade chip. Cleveland doesn't really mess around with players like this, where they know if they can't really re-sign him, they might as well just kind of part ways. Jose Ramirez was a player that they extended really early, so he's on that team discount. Too late to do that with a guy like Shane Bieber. So there are going to be teams, knocking on their door, and we'll talk about in a second if Cleveland will be answering that door or picking up those phone calls, because maybe they're going to be in the hunt in the AL Central after a couple of things that have recently gone down. But Shane Bieber has to be that top trade chip, with Burns having already gone, and we know Baltimore is going to be in the hunt. So it's not as if they're going to be reversing course that quickly. Dylan Cease already gone. Zach Wheeler was supposed to be a free agent. He's now off that market, which only furthers how much money those starting pitchers are going to get in free agency. But he's off the market now. So there's not too many places that you can go to get a number one starter like Shane Bieber. So Cleveland is definitely going to be fielding a lot of calls about him.
And I think really when I look at the league right now, because I always try to think ahead, like, all right, who are the players to be watching that might be moved? And I think there's a couple of arms that could go at this deadline for an absolute king's ransom. And it's Jesus Luzardo and Freddie Peralta, just because they're so cheap and they have so much control. But if you're trying to win, let's say the Yankees, Garrett Cole ends up out for the season, which is still, the prognosis is pretty good, but that's not out of the realm of possibilities. Well, if you don't want to pay that Luzardo price or that Freddie Peralta price, and I'll tell you, Freddie Peralta threw the ball great against my Mets, which might just be because he was facing my Mets. But Shane Bieber is the one guy that is a rental. So, yes, he might cost a lot and might get the Guardians a lot for a rental, but it's still a rental. So, he's definitely that name that I got circled. Like, okay, how's the season going to go for the Guardians? How's it going to go for Bieber? And ultimately, if he's moved, where?
Yeah, that's really the question, right? Who's going to have that need, right? It could very much be the Yankees if Cole is gone. And there's plenty of teams out there that have a strong rotation, but they don't have that front of the line kind of guy. And so I think there are going to be plenty of teams that are going to want to go up. You just can't have enough starting pitching. That's the bottom line. So it's gonna require a little bit of a ransom too, and Cleveland does a good job of picking other organizations at times. They've also had their organization picked a lot. They're in serious need of a power hitting outfielder, and they've gotten rid of far too many of those guys in recent memory. But yeah, I mean the only other guy that I can think of right now off the top of my head that's going to be a free agent after this year that could impact a rotation. He's nowhere even close to Shane Bieber in his league. And that's a guy like Jack Flaherty, where you say, okay, Detroit might be out of the hunt. Sure, they'll go off and trade him, but Jack Flaherty and Shane Bieber, they are in two different leagues.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of guys that signed those 1-year deals this offseason, but like you said, no one up to that level of a Bieber. So he's going to be a name to watch for sure. And you alluded to this before, how this division could shape up, and maybe the Guardians are more in the mix than we think they might be. Right now, on paper, you look at the Twins and you thought, well, they're the clear favorites. Royce Lewis, the worst news of the opening weekend here is Royce Lewis goes down with a quad strain. And at first he said, I thought about staying back in there. I thought it was maybe a cramp. He really kind of made it seem like it wasn't that serious. Unfortunately, we get the injury designation. It's a severe quad strain, and they say probably at least 2 months for a guy that has had 2 ACL tears in his MLB career. Just has not been able to stay on the field. And it really sucks because he was going to be their number 3 hitter this season. And I know it's just baseball. We're as high on Royce Lewis as any outlet. We had him in our top 10 third basemen. We think the world of him, but just devastating for the Twins to lose this guy in the first game there.
Yeah, I think everyone looked at that roster and said, where can they get more? Or who can they get more out of? And Carlos Correa certainly is one of those guys. All right, you want Buxton to be healthy. You kind of know what to expect out of them. But Royce Lewis is that X factor, and you saw what he was able to do somewhat in the postseason last year too, right? So the dude can match. There's a reason why he was the first overall pick, but there's also a reason why you have to question, that the Twins, are they going to really be able to hang in there with the loss of arguably the best hitter in their lineup? Maybe doesn't have the best resume because he's still that young and he has been banged up, but when healthy, he is the best hitter in their lineup. So that is a critical blow and a critical loss, probably the biggest in all of baseball this weekend.
And I think it was 2 for 2 in that game too. So it's just it's such a shame. And now, the question is who fills in at third base. They called up Austin Martin. They have Willie Castro and Kyle Farmer on the roster as well. But that's really big. We were even talking, do you all of a sudden have buyer's remorse or seller's remorse on dealing Jorge Polanco? Because now there's this gaping hole at third base that is going to be filled with some real unknown commodities.
Yeah, you could have either Polanco shifting over to third or the incumbent second baseman, Edward Julian, moving over to third base. They've got some options. They called up Martin, who was able to make his debut, but he was in center field rather than, third base. So that was kind of puzzling. But their top prospect, Brooks Lee, is, he's a top 100 prospect, top 50, really. It was selected in the first round, 8th overall in 2022, has that really good pedigree out of Cal State, San Luis Obispo. So, he's another guy that could factor in at that. He played some significant time last year in AAA. So, they've got some options. Again, none as good as Royce Lewis. But it's one of the reasons why you need everybody on your 40-man roster and then some. It's just a shame that Rocco Baldelli's crew has to immediately dip into that depth after losing one of their best players.
Yeah, and even if they can stopgap fill third base to get that top tier production in your lineup, I think to fill that void, it's going to come down to two guys that have struggled with consistency, both health and performance, and that is Correa and Buxton. I mean, those guys more than ever have to drive this team. It's great to see Kevin Henry wrote an awesome piece for us at Just Baseball. He was in Kansas City for this series, and he wrote a great piece talking about just the vibes around Buxton in that clubhouse. How he just was exuding just enthusiasm. That he had a huge smile on his face. He's healthy. They were talking about how when he runs out there, it's different. He's playing center field again. That's an awesome story. But if you're counting on Buxton to deal with a guy who just went down because he has a long injury track record, and it's Byron Buxton that you're hoping to be healthy for a 162, that's a tough position to be in as a team here, because we all know it feels like a ticking time bomb. I hate to say it, but that's where we're at with Buxton as well. It's just been a long track record of something always coming up. Maybe this is the year that he actually stays healthy.
Yeah, they're definitely riding a tightrope with Buxton there, and that's rough. You just don't want that. Max Kepler, of course, has been held out the last 2 games because of injury, so they're kind of feeling it early on for a team that is the favorite. But of all of the teams that you might have picked to win the division, Twins were probably number 6, right? I think on the depth chart for a lot of folks, and again, a lot of good battles throughout the various divisions, but you just know confidence-wise, it's more about the Twins than it is about the second, third, fourth place team in that division. So, they've got a lot to overcome here in the early going with the loss of Lewis.
They do. Hopefully, he gets back at the earliest timeline of that 2-month window. But even then, you're looking at this point, June is best case scenario, and you're all of a sudden a setback. We might not see him until the second half. So hopefully that does not take him out for much longer than that, but we really don't know. Let's close out the show today with who killed your team this weekend. I'll let you start it off. Who killed the Rockies this weekend?
Everyone. It's hard to pinpoint a single player. I think actually Lourdes Gurriel is that guy where he homered in the first 3 games of the season. That set a new franchise record for the Diamondbacks. That's kind of pretty big. But when you lose 16-1 on opening day, not great in general. But 471. He had another double today. 2 more RBI. 10 RBI through the first 4 games of the season. OPS of 1644. The guy that when you run down the list of players that the Diamondbacks signed, most people forgot about him. Yeah, he re-signed, but they did bring him back. That was one of the big moves of their offseason. The oft-forgotten Lourdes Gurriel Jr. He's kind of putting himself right at the forefront as far as the Rockies fan base saying, man, we hate this guy already. We don't really want to see him again. Next week in Coors Field, where he's going to be playing Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned and not talked about. I'm trying to rack my brain and think if we even discussed him when we were going through the best off seasons. I'm like, did we mention Gurriel? I know we talked about Jock Peterson, Randall Grichuk, obviously the pitching additions. We might not even mention bringing back Gurriel, but he had a huge weekend. My Mets. We all heard all the rumblings out of Citi Field this weekend when it came to Rhys Hoskins. He would be the obvious pick. He had a great game on Saturday, coming after that late slide on opening day on Friday, where he went 3 for 3 to start the game with a home run, 4 RBIs, scored on a balk. I mean, he was just all over the place before the Mets threw behind his back and caused all of that outward. But I'll tell you, from watching the series, the guy that stood out to me was seeing Jackson Chourio on a big league field for the first time. I totally understand why the Brewers were comfortable giving him the contract before he played a game, because his athleticism, to me, even if he's not hitting, and this weekend he went 5 for 12, but his athleticism, he's one of those guys that just the fact that he's on the field for you, he's going to help them win games. Made some great plays in the outfield. There's even a couple plays where he took the wrong route, and his athleticism, he was able to just still catch it and make kind of a routine play look exceptional, because he come in a ball, then like realize, oh wait, comes back, leaps, makes a catch. And then any ball that you see Chourio hit in the infield, it's in play for a base hit. This guy flies down the baseline. So Chourio is a player that I'm looking at the Brewers now in kind of a different lens, saying, you know what, that Central is far from a decided race. There's a lot of teams that can be in the mix, and we were all kind of counting out the Brewers. But when you see Chourio play that way, Yelich had a great series against the Mets as well. Coming off a solid season. Rhys Hoskins, of course, now added to the fold. I think they could have a sneaky good lineup this season. I'd be very concerned about the pitching in Milwaukee after trading Burns and losing Woodruff. But, man, Chourio looks great, and that lineup could be scary good this year.
Speed is definitely that new money ball value, where it was, hey, on base percentage is really important. And then we saw in the 2010s teams like the Royals going, hey, defense is really important. Let's rack up as many of those guys as possible. I think speed is that new thing. And you didn't even mention Bryce Terang, who had 4 stolen bases. So like that team is absolutely going to run. On looking at the AL Central again, I don't know if Royals fans are necessarily sick and tired of Luis Robert Jr., since he's really the only threat in that lineup. But I think White Sox fans are probably a little bit sick of Bobby Witt Jr., and they better get used to that, because he's going to be around forever. He was absolutely terrific this weekend, despite the fact that the Royals were only able to get 1 out of 3 in that series. But Bobby Witt Jr., again, it's hard to hate a guy like that, I think. But White Sox fans are salty right now, and rightfully so, with everything that they've had to deal with. So you know what? When you see a young and exciting player like that, and to know that your team doesn't really have too many of those guys, that's going to sting a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. This is the time where one series will make those stats look crazy. Bobby Witt is a great example. Too bad, like 600 or something crazy. It's just around the game. We're going to see some funny numbers for the first couple of weeks here. We're going to see a lot of that little rivalry come back, or just the fact that you can spend a weekend where I didn't expect to hate Rhys Hoskins again the way I did. And then all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, I remember you, Mr. Philly over there, with your late slides and your antics. It's just good to have that overreaction back with the baseball season finally here.
Yeah, who are the Mets going to hate on the Tigers now for the next series that starts on Tuesday?
I don't know. I hope nobody. I hope the Mets can get back on, or get. I would say I've said that before. Get back on track. They haven't been on track yet. Can get on track against the Tigers team that just swept. They just had a sweep to start their season, so maybe they're due for a loss. The Mets are due for some wins, and they'll find their way into the win column. And I won't hate anybody from that Tigers team, but I don't know who I'd predict. Torkelson, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, Mets are one of only 4 teams to not have a win yet this season, starting out 0-3. But that's better than the Marlins, 0-4, and it was 0-4 at the hands of the Pirates too.
Yeah. The Rockies get one?
Rockies got 1. They got 1 on Saturday, so they are 1-3, tied for their worst start in franchise history, the 10th time that they've started out that way. And now they got to go to Chicago in April to open up Wrigley Field. Yeah, they actually ended their season last year in Chicago. Their final road trip was on the north side, so they'll go to Chicago before their home opener on Friday against the Rays. You ready for Rays Rockies?
Honestly, I think I'll skip that one. I think I will. I'll be honest. I don't think I'm going to devote any time next weekend to Rays Rockies, but I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, that has to be the strangest home opener. Just getting an interleague team that has been to your building maybe only twice before. So, but it'll be nice to be at the ballpark for that. All of the home opener festivities on Friday. So look, it's baseball. Even when it's bad, it's good, right?
It's always good.
You've got plenty more to say on that, I am sure.
Yeah, well, we'll have a whole other show later midweek here to discuss what's going on in baseball. Who's better? We'll be back probably Wednesday, I would guess. So make sure you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow the podcast feed. That's live now, so you can listen on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. And what's our Twitter account? Who's
better BB? Like just BB_media, because we're just baseball. At who's better BB.
So follow us there as well. And like I said, we'll be back midweek.